Hello and welcome back to coverage here at Grand Prix Los Angeles. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Rietzel bringing you coverage of round number 14, where we have Lee Marino on the right-hand side of your screen. He's playing against Steven Solis on the left. Black-green Constrictor, Paul, versus mono-red aggro. What do you make of the matchup?
Yeah, it's traditionally pretty good for the black-green Constrictor deck as compared to the more commonly seen red-black Chain Whirler deck. Why is that? It's because Lee doesn't have access to as many of those ways to deal 3 and 4 damage. So no copies of Abrade, no Cut Ribbons, no Chandra Torch Defiance, and no Glorybringer. So those are the types of cards that you really want to beat the black-green Constrictor deck, and Steven may have the ability to kind of get set up here.
Well, you know what they say about Magic. You always shock the elf, and that's exactly what happened here. But a Walking Ballista could be a little bit of a brick wall down the line here for Steven, though Karizev sidesteps that pretty nicely.
Yes, and a big draw step already for Steven. You notice he used the energy from turn 1 Ether Hub to play Llanowar Elf, so he needed to find a basic forest to really execute his game plan here.
Hello. Whining Constrictor, extremely threatening if you're sitting in Lee Marino's seat, as one more mana source for Steven Solis. And we're going to see that Walking Ballista start getting out of hand and quickly. So Lee very much going to need to find an answer for that, or just find a bunch of threats that overwhelm Steven Solis' ability to take them down. It's going to be a tough spot.
You absolutely do not want to let the Black-Green Constrictor deck untap with the Whining Constrictor. It's just, it looks so kind of innocent and well, it is a snake, I guess, so not that innocent, but it looks kind of unassuming. But if you ever let them untap with it, just horrible things end up happening to you. So the safest course of action is always to just kill it on site. Full freight there on that Wizard's Lightning. Doesn't feel good when you're playing a low to the ground kind of red deck, but I think Lee intelligently identifies that you can't win a long game when Whining Constrictor stays in the battlefield. So, wow.
Goodness sakes.
And this is the problem. I mean, this is the issue with the mono red deck as opposed to red black. You just can't play enough of the removal spells, and the way that you beat Black Green Constrictor is by just killing every one of the relevant creatures.
Don't have the tools to do so. That is going to be tough. And boy, these creatures are getting big and quickly. Even without the Whining Constrictor, it's already a 3/3 Rishkar, and that Walking Ballista has 2 counters on it. So Lee Marino has his hands full. There's no doubt about it. But getting rid of that Whining Constrictor certainly reduces the explosive element of the deck, and perhaps can let Lee try to stabilize from here. Though I have to say, once I start talking about the mono-red aggro player worrying about stabilizing the board, it's often not where they want to be anyway.
Yeah. And Lee, importantly, does not have access to any Chandra Torch of Defiance, any of the Flame of Keld, any of those cards that can kind of refill his hand. So his only way to produce kind of mid to late game power is 4 copies of Hazoret the Fervent, and then the Eternalize ability of Earthshaker Kenra. But realistically, the longer this game goes, the better it gets for Steven, who can utilize lands 4, 5, and 6 pretty effectively.
Yeah, he hasn't actually drawn any of those yet, but he just played Rishkar, Pima, Renegade back-to-back, and Steven, even perhaps being fine with Lee Marino using a full 3 mana for Wizard's Lightning on his own turn to kill a Rishkar when he had another one in his hand anyway. A little bit rough for Lee as well. His deck is set up to be able to cast Wizard's Lightning as a lightning bolt, but just hasn't had that pirate synergy going on here, and he's had to pay full price for 2 copies of Wizard's Lightning. That's a lot to pay.
You see him play a 5th mountain here. Again, other than the Eternalize ability of Earthshaker Kenra, he doesn't have any other use for 5 mana. So decision point there for Steven early. He could have used Walking Ballista to take out Karizev and potentially save himself some life. He values keeping the Walking Ballista on the battlefield. So interesting early decision point. A lot of times against these red decks, every point of damage is pretty scary to take.
Also, my friends in chat, of course, with the snap correction. I did mean to say wizard, not pirate.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah, this is not.
It's not Pirate's Lightning.
Yes. This is not Angrath we're talking about here, trying to return pirates from the graveyard.
I think our dream of seeing that card on camera died when it was never in anybody's deck in the tournament.
Yes. Pump fake.
Yeah, it got me in the air.
And this is a pretty ugly Bomac career.
Short-lived, shall we say.
Yeah. Boom, take one.
Yeah. This has just been such an uphill climb for Lee Marino without the real curve out that he wanted. I mean, even then, he has been able to control the board reasonably well, but leaning on Kari Zev, especially when she's only getting in, it's just such a tough spot because Lee has just fallen behind turn after turn here as Steven has continued to just play bigger creatures. And as you can see, he's even ahead in the damage race and pretty comfortably at that.
Yeah, that last turn, Lee really needed to have exactly Hazoret.
That was how he could stabilize even further. But it didn't happen, and Lee Marino's going to scoop him up. That's Steven Solis picking up game number 1. I mentioned it when we were coming into the round here, Paul, but both players sitting at 11-2. That third loss is the death knell as far as top 8 goes, right?
Third loss of the death knell. We don't know if a win will allow these players to maybe take an intentional draw next round and get in. We haven't seen, obviously, the standings yet, but certainly a 12th win is what they're looking for here. And Lee has many more tools here in the post-sideboard games for this matchup. So all those sorts of 4 damage things, 3 copies of Chandra Torch Defiance, 2 of Cut Ribbons that we mentioned earlier are coming in for sure. 2 of Braids allows him to find another answer to Whining Constrictor. I wonder if we might see him use Kari Zev's expertise. That's something that we haven't seen on camera too much, but Steven Solis' deck can often make some gigantic, often trampling creatures, and Kari Zev's expertise can win a game out of nowhere.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
And a clean answer to Walking Ballista as well. No matter how large Walking Ballista gets, you can force your opponent to use it. One of the things about Lee's deck, though, is that other than, again, the Chandra Torch of Defiance that he has in his sideboard, there aren't a lot of repetitive advantage generators. He's still not able to grind that effectively. So whereas more of a traditional, red-black Chain Whirler deck can sideboard into really almost a full control strategy against Black-Green Constrictor after sideboarding, Lee's going to have to do kind of an improvisational effort, his own take on that. So he's certainly in much better shape in the post-sideboard games than he was game 1, but still obviously an uphill climb to win 2 straight against a deck like this.
It's always interesting. One of my favorite parts of doing coverage, Paul, is trying to convey the difference in tone that you get down in the feature match area when there's it doesn't look different from here, right? If you're watching it on your screen, it's just like it looks just like round 3 did. It's a couple of players sitting down to play against each other, and maybe somebody's going to win. There's going to be a handshake, and we're just going to move on. But that's not the case here. Both of these players have been on fantastic runs this tournament, just getting here to 11-2, and they both know all too well that it all comes down to this match for one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And, a win here has such high upside for them because not only are they still live for top 8, they may just be in, right? If they go to the standing sheet after this round and before the next one and they realize that they're playing against somebody with the same record and that their tiebreakers are amenable, they could shake hands, go get a sandwich, and find themselves in the top 8 after winning this. On the other side of that coin, the dream's dead.
Yes.
Like, you're going to have a strong finish kind of regardless, but, boy, you lose here, maybe you lose your last round, and you turn – I was a game away from the top 8 into I got a couple of pro points in it, maybe I cashed.
Magic is many different things for many different people. Some people like to express themselves. They like the art. They like the community. They like the friends. This part of the tournament, this part of competitive Magic is about the competition. So it's very binary. You've won or you've lost. You're the hero or the villain. And a Magic career, whether it's an aspiring, professional career or even potentially a Hall of Fame career, oftentimes hinges on a few games, a few turns of a few matches in these high-pressure situations where you either win or you lose. And it's a harsh reality, but for those of us who are the kind of ultra-competitive type, it really gets our blood pumping and keeps us coming back after all these years.
Yeah, the interesting part, too, is that you have professional or semi-professional players who travel to tournaments frequently, and if they don't hit here, they think, okay, back on the horse. Next weekend I'll be somewhere else, and then I'll be somewhere else, and I will keep knocking at the door until I make it in. But, boy, when you're a local player and you can come out and put yourself into this position, it's once a year.
Yes. No, that's what first got me into Magic way back when. They brought the Grand Prix circuit to Boston, where I was growing up, and I had a chance to play against a Pro Tour champion at my first ever event. And
who was it?
Michael Lecanto.
Oh,
so the first Pro Tour champion.
Pro Tour champion.
And, well, in 1998, there weren't that many Pro Tour champions out there, so
fair enough.
Got me hooked.
Do you think Steven Solis was offering to arm wrestle for the next match against Lee, or?
I was going to say, even if he loses this game 2 and has some heavy lifting for game 3, he seems well equipped to be able to handle it. So,
Let's just say I would decline that offer.
yeah. He definitely, I think, exercises. There's no question about it.
He even lifts, yes.
Yeah.
He's going to take a mulligan here, it looks like.
ASU, I noticed, represented my neck of the woods.
Mm-hmm. Net currently.
Yes.
You didn't go to
current
school
neck
there.
No, but not far from where I currently reside.
Mm. Somehow you went from Boston to L.A. to the desert.
That's right. Trying to make sure I keep my body in a constant state of flux.
Yeah.
Don't want it to get too comfortable.
I'm boring. I've never.
Pacific Northwest
Yeah.
the whole time.
Pack and dubs for life. I just never moved.
Doesn't that rain get into your bones?
It does a little, man.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I'm a sunshine guy. I definitely get a little sad during the gray times. But I'll tell you what, summer up there, it's beautiful. No humidity, a balmy 78 degrees. You're loving life. All right, looks like we're just about ready to get going here, as we do have a keep from Steven. And a good start here from Lee Marino, who's on the full 7 cards and on the play, looking to strike back and try to get things evened up. But, oh, boy, Fatal Push is going to send that turn 1 Soulscar Mage right to the bin. There's a replacement Gitu Lava Runner, but it's a little anemic at this point. Wow, I see some power in Lee Marino's hand, though. He's got a Chandra, and he also has Hazoret, and maybe a Lightning Strike, too.
Yeah, Chandra probably the single best card that he could possibly have.
Now, that was interesting. You saw Steven use Cast Down on the 1-powered Gitu Lava Runner there. You often see players say, I'll take the 1 and kind of suss it out at end of turn here.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
An aggressive use of his removal. I
Yeah.
think that Steven wants to protect his life total. He sees things like Ravenous Chupacabra and Verdurous Gearhulk in his own hand, and he's thinking, if I can just get the time to be able to deploy my threats, then I'm in good shape. But obviously the Chain Whirler follow-up might have been a more attractive target for that cast down.
Might have been worth the 1 damage to find out. You feel a little silly if your opponent goes, meh, go, and then you have to just use it anyway.
Right.
Well, there's Chandra Torch of Defiance, so right on time for Lee Marino. He's going to plus and keep the damage flowing. Steven's instinct of protecting his life total at all costs is certainly correct. The way you go about it, though, of course, varies greatly. And here's that Ravenous Chupacabra killing the Chain Whirler. You know, when we've seen Chupacabra, we've seen the player cast it lose frequently, but it's looked okay. I mean, it's been killing reasonable threats on the other side. We saw it kill a Glorybringer earlier and a Chain Whirler now.
Well, it's not his fault that Lee has.
We're not going to blame the Chupa.
Yeah, no, that Lee's draw is just kind of perfect here. So,
wow, and look at that. Plus Chandra to get the mana for Lightning Strike, to get it out of his hand so that he could then cast Hazoret the Fervent here on turn 5 and crash in, knocking Steven down to 9 already.
yeah.
And he's going to have to make an 8/8.
Less of the kind of stinky Bomac Courier 1 toughness tiny little creature action, and more of the mythic rare kind of action is what Lee's interested in against Steven's deck.
Yeah, he starts off with a much lower curve. Wow, this is one of the worst Gearhulks I've seen.
Yeah.
He can simply attack with Hazoret. Steven's compelled to block, and he can just use Chandra to finish it off. That's assuming he doesn't have some other answer for it. No, he does need to get a card out of his hand.
Speak of time for Karizev's expertise.
Oh. That would send us happily into game 3.
That's only 13.
Card you don't see very often, but it's around.
Realistically, Steven's path back into this game involved multiple copies of Vraska's Contempt chained back to back. So that was really his only way back in.
Soulscar Mage, and then -4 right now. Though, either way, if Steven chooses to block, he's going to be losing the Verdurous Gearhulk and taking no damage. Now, he is thinking, though.
Surprising sequencing there, yeah, because
Yeah.
by using the Chandra's ability, Steven could, in theory, take the damage and still survive the turn, right? If Lee had attacked with the Hazoret first, it would have obligated a block by Verdurous Gear Hulk, because then Hazoret activating plus a Chandra plus would have finished Steven off. So Lee gave Steven an option there, and not that it's going to make much of a difference, but whenever you can choose to give your opponent fewer options, that's usually the smart thing to do.
Yeah, he should have done it the other way around. And Steven did take advantage by not blocking, though, as you said, that the way he comes back here isn't really clear at this point, as he kind of needed to cast Vraska's Contempt last turn and then also have one this turn, and he had neither. So a convincing victory there for Lee Marino. No matter which way you slice it, he really smashed that game. And now Steven Solis is going to go back to the sideboard, and we're going to get one game to decide it. I also really appreciate, by the way, we mentioned the tension that can be felt. One way that some type of players like to relieve that tension is actually to chat with their opponent. And boy, when you get two players that are like that, you make a friendship. I mean, they love each other down there, and these guys seem to be, being really cordial to each other, which I think is cool. At least in between games. Yeah,
it's a serious mind sport, and people spend a lot of time on Magic the Gathering preparing for tournaments and take it very seriously. But it is, I think, worth remembering that it is just a game. And so, that this is it's serious, but it is something to have fun and enjoy. And I appreciate when people can laugh a little bit. I have been known to crack a few jokes in high pressure situations in these sorts of matches.
I've seen you do that before. I think it benefits you because your opponents are always like, crap, I'm playing Paul Rietzel, and he seems so comfortable, and then you'll snap a joke on him. It's just like, because you're intimidating to play against, man. I don't consider you intimidating person, like you're very personable. But my God, when you sit down and you do the thing where you put your hand on the side of your head and you're in the tank, it's like he's going to figure out a way to beat me. I just know it. I've seen it for years now.
I'm just resting when I do that.
Yeah, right.
One time I was playing for the top 4 of the World Championships against Martin Mueller, and I had trouble kind of engaging him in a conversation. So I just struck up a conversation with a fly that was on the table. That
I remember that
was sitting next to me because
I remember that.
I wanted to relieve the tension a little bit.
Oh man, I had totally forgotten that. It's really funny.
And the fly, interestingly enough, did not talk back to me. Didn't say anything. Yeah, just kind of.
I said the same amount that Martin did.
And Martin beat me very badly that game.
Well, we know whose team the fly was on now, don't we? What about now? Are you and Martin close friends, or is he still giving you the stonewall?
Oh, I wouldn't say close friends, but we're very friendly with each other.
Okay.
So
like if you message him on Facebook, he doesn't just ignore it.
That's right, and we did prepare together for the last Pro Tour as we had kind of a jumble with the Genesis.
That was a really interesting scenario.
It was fun.
I don't know if that many people really know about that.
Yeah.
I found myself in a somewhat awkward position because I talked to one of your testing team partners, William Huey Jensen.
Yeah. And
he told me about it, but I have kind of a dual role on coverage, and he was like, "Well, we're not really making that public right now." And I'm for somebody in my position, I need to have good working relationships with the pros, friendships aside, so that they know if they tell me, for example, what deck they're going to play, that I will not ever say that to anybody else, because that's really useful information for me to have ahead of time. But if I betray their trust, I'll never get it again.
Of course.
So I told Jensen, okay, I won't say anything about it. But he said, it's not too hard to figure out, so somebody on your team probably will. And if they do and they say it, then you can go ahead and talk about it. It just took a while for us to because it's such an unlikely combo.
It was. We just needed the resources. Most Pro Tours are 2 formats, and draft you can kind of prepare for a lot on your own. Here it was 3 constructed formats, so just an incredible amount of work for.
You picked the right. Brad Nelson?
Yeah.
That guy's a workhorse.
For sure.
Yeah, he is no joke. Looks like we've got a mulligan here from Lee.
And we've mentioned it a few times this weekend, but Lee's deck with 4 copies of Hazoret the Fervent is one that mulligans particularly well. So if he has a low to the ground type of hand, ending his curve with a turn 4 Hazoret, and Steven doesn't have one of his ways to exile things, specifically, Vraska's Contempt, then Lee can easily come back from a single mulligan. Although really, the role assignment is going to be kind of interesting early on, right? Does Lee need to get some important creatures on Steven's side dead? Steven has creatures like Walking Ballista, like Winding Constrictor, like Rishkar, Pima Renegade that can be very, very difficult to beat in sort of the mid to late game for Lee. So we'll see whether he wants to be the aggressor or does he want to play the kind of the removal game.
Yeah, this is a really cool matchup. The players each have answers to their opponent's best stuff. It's just a matter of if they draw it and how they decide to use that removal.
And Steven only has 3 copies
saw
of
that.
Vraska's Contempt.
That surprised
no
me,
more
Paul.
in the sideboard and no other way to gain life. So, you know, those are cards that he will value having very highly in his hand or near the top of his library.
I was really surprised to see only 3. It feels like a major pull towards a black-green deck would be to have access to 4 of those.
I love Vraska's Contempt right now. I think
Same.
that when you think about black-red being a pillar of the format, it's obviously incredibly good against Rekindling Phoenix and Hazoret and Chandra. And then, of course, the other pillar of the format are Teferi decks, which you want to get Teferi dead right away. So I think Vraska's Contempt a particularly well-positioned card right now.
Let's see if Lee can keep this 6. I do hope so. I want to see a great game. There's a lot on the line. No, he said send it back. And we've got a real problem here. Lee Marino sending it back to 5 cards. Now, you mentioned that it's not the end of the world for the deck to mulligan down to 6. On 5, we're starting to get a little resource light here.
Once you get down to 5, right, now you no longer have potentially the let me grind you out with removal spells kind of game plan available. Now the vast majority of Lee's winning angles, winning paths involve Hazoret, involve kind of a couple lands, let me get a couple cheap creatures down, maybe 1 burn spell for your blocker, boom, turn 4 Hazoret, and it just puts you under too much pressure. Lee's removal heavy hands on 5 cards is just not a sustainable path to victory. You can't control your opponent when you're down that many resources.
I think Steve's telling war stories about having a mulligan to 4. And I think Lee's like, let's just not talk about that just yet. Oh, the super cut there from Solus as well. Let's see if we can get a 5 that's worth keeping here for Lee Marino and maybe get on that Hazoret plan.
2 Mountain, a Hazoret, and anything else is what we're looking for right now.
He kept it, and he kept it pretty quickly. So, game 3 incoming. Will it be Lee Marino? Will it be Steven Solus? They are playing to keep their top 8 dream alive and maybe even just get right into the top 8 with the win here if they can secure a draw next turn. Perfect opener here from Steven with the turn 2 Winding Constrictor, and it's going to stay on the battlefield with only 1 land. Paul, this one could fall apart very quickly. Well, a little bit of good news for Lee, and that Steven at least didn't have Rishkar there.
Yeah, no
But,
Rishkar is
that's what you're rooting for, though. A Thrashing Brontodon looks just fine as well.
cold comfort.
Ugh, you got to feel for Lee.
Yeah, you play mono red because of the consistent mana base, just 22 basic mountains as your mana base. You're hoping that you're going to be able to kind of consistently.
Well, it does kill it, right?
Yep.
So Shock is going to put 2 -1/-1 counters on the Constrictor, but Lee's going to actually use its ability against it to add an additional 1, and that will kill it. All thanks to Soulscar Mage, which no longer exists. And now there's 5 power facing down a mountain.
So I'm not sure if we missed the energy trigger here from Ether Hub or if he's just not representing it with a die on the energy reserve. So I'm not sure. I think he missed the trigger.
I believe that he missed a trigger, and I just think he just doesn't care.
He's got
All
bigger
right.
and better things going on.
Yeah, like getting Lee dead, though Lee did find mountain number 2 and cast Cut to kill Thrashy B.
Yep. And Steve
So-
does need something else. I mean,
Yeah,
Chupacabra alone is not going to get it done.
like if he just passes here, no, he's got another Thrashing Brontodon.
Okay, but this is the part of Steven's deck that gives Lee a little bit of time to draw out of this. So, not over yet.
Goblin Chain Whirler's going to help stabilize against the Chupacabra.
Uh-oh.
That was another land there for Solus.
Yeah, is that a Ballista, though?
Ooh,
That could be problematic.
it is indeed.
Yeah, that's trouble.
Walking Ballista for 3. Go.
And that starting to close the door here for Lee. Unfortunately, he needs to kill the Walking Ballista. Can't let him untap with it, but at the same time, the Ballista can respond by taking out the Chain Whirler. You know,
Getting that 2-for-1 in place.
yep, and threatening now another 5. So, yeesh.
He has Hazaret,
He
but
has
3 cards in
Hazaret. Wow.
hand. Yeah, it's really tough. If he plays it out of his hand, it won't be able to engage in any type of combat this turn. Now, for a 5-card hand, this has been pretty good for Lee, but Steve Solis has yet to miss a beat.
If this plays Hazaret, he's dead. I mean, not literally actually dead, but basically dead, since Steven will be able to attack with everything. Lee will have no good blocks, and then, you know, it's all over. But the crying here, he really needs something better than Hazaret.
And it's going to be Goblin Chain Whirler number 2. How does this change things?
It's not enough. So
Still
really,
not
just the issue here is that Steven can use his Ballista and pump it up to 4, which means that the Brontodon can attack in and can't comfortably be double blocked.
Oh boy. Steve Solis laying it on thick. He's just going to use a Walking Ballista actually to just take out both copies of Chain Whirler and clear the way for 5. That was very aggressive from Solis. Could we possibly see Lee Marino take advantage of the aggression there of Steven Solis by giving away both of his ballistas? He now has Hazaret the Fervent as a blocker. He's not dead on board.
He must have something else.
To just toss those 2 ballistas?
I mean, that's incredible. Yeah, I don't understand what just happened there. The first Ballista killing the Chain Whirler, totally understandable to be able to bring in the Thrashing Brontodon, but now, oh my gosh, Lee's right back in this game.
All he has is another Thrashing Brontodon, and Lee could find his way out, but he's going to need something.
Yep.
If he's out of everything here, if it's just a pair of lands in hand, he will not be able to survive the next attack, assuming, of course, that Steven goes for it. But there it is. Kari Zev, Skyship Raider, keeps him clinging to life.
I mean, Lee's still in just an absolute precarious
nightmare.
position. Anything from Steven, could put him away here.
He
But
could have been dead by now.
oh, for sure, he'd be dead by now. Uh-oh. This seems like Verdurous Gearhulk to me.
Bingo, Paul.
Bingo.
Verdurous Gearhulk is going to splash around a bunch of +1/+1 counters and make Lee Marino's life extraordinarily difficult here.
Yeah. Man, you feel for Lee. He had just that window of false hope,
I do.
and unfortunately, it's about to come to an end.
Yeah, Steven
What a draw.
getting the job done here. Lee, you can't go for the double block and survive unless you have a removal spell for a Brontodon. And in mono red with 6 toughness, that's a tough sell to say the least.
They haven't printed too many 3-mana red instants to kill 5/6s.
No. And it's really tough, too, because he's going to end up chump blocking and then blocking with Hazaret, but he doesn't even get to kill one of the 2 Brontodons here, short of a burn spell. Yeah, he's just going to end up chucking a mountain at Steve Solis' face, but this is probably the last draw step of Lee Marino's top 8 hopes here. Now, we don't want to make it sound like top 8's the only thing, right?
Sure.
There is other stuff that you can do, and look at this. He even found a Chandra, but it is going to be too late here for Lee Marino. He can still have a solid finish.
Yeah, 12-3 certainly, with the $1,000 and some pro points and plenty that you can win with 12-3.
That's right. The handshake goes out, and that is Steven Solis advancing to round number 15, perhaps earning his seat in the top 8, depending on how tiebreakers go next round. He may also need to play it out, so he's not a lock by any stretch. He accomplished the task at hand, which was keep himself in contention, and he did exactly that.
Black Reconstrictor kind of has an interesting place in the metagame. I mentioned not a deck that I would have particularly selected for this field because I think it's an underdog against the red-black Chain Whirler deck. But, as metagames evolve, you have decks like the mono red that comes in to go under the red-black, and then a deck like Constrictor can maybe prey on that. So, if you get lucky the few times you play against red-black and then you kind of prey on everything else, that can be a recipe for top 8.
We saw it here. Maybe he needs one more good matchup, or maybe he even gets to draw, and we'll keep an eye on that and all the stories and more as we work our way through MTG Red Zone. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll have Time Walk for you. Don't go anywhere. We got Time Walk Magic lined up for you here in MTG Red Zone because even though the main match that we watched had a lot on the line as far as top 8 considerations went, well, we've got 2 other matches in the feature match here that also have a lot on the line. So let's head down to Time Walk right now. Here we've got Chris Ferber playing against Mitchell Tamblyn. And as you can see, Paul, they both have the same record, kind of an interesting one. They're 11-1-1.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
It means that a win here, and they are very likely into the top 8. 2 wins, they are certainly into the top 8. Potentially a win and a draw. I mean, so it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
You'll have to see the way the time goes. Certainly with a loss and a draw, they control their own destiny. So back-to-back wins will certainly get them into this top 8.
We haven't seen a Godfarrow's Gift deck on camera, you and I, yet. But perhaps our other commentary team did, but we haven't. And this is white-blue Godfarrow's Gift, it looks like. Strategic planning helping to fuel the fire there. On the other side, Grixis mid-range. So a bit of a break from the normal, Teferi or Chain Whirler antics that we've been seeing.
Right.
And these guys are, maybe playing for top 8 here.
Absolutely. And Chris's main game plan is to get a Godfarrow's Gift into the graveyard and then refurbish it back to the battlefield. Mitchell, will have access to things like a Braid, possibly counter magic to stop that from happening. His main game plan is to play things like Nicol Bolas, maybe some other 3 and 4 casting cost creatures, and it's a true mid-range strategy. He's trying to grind Chris into dust.
In the meantime, Chris is going to start things off a little on the fair side. Go for that champion, pass the turn back to Mitchell.
And Mitchell gets to play these early turns with quite a bit of comfort. When the Godfarrow's Gift deck has not yet put Godfarrow's Gift into the graveyard, you know that there's not much risk of a disastrous next turn. So Mitchell really wants to take advantage of these few turns while the coast is clear to develop a pressuring board state before he needs to start saying go and leaving a Braid up every turn. So
Sunscourge Champion is actually going to be able to get in here thanks to Thopter Arrest taking care of that Rekindling Phoenix. The Sunscourge Champion, of course, has the ability to eternalize, and part of its cost to eternalize is discarding a card, which is actually a benefit in a Godfarrow's Gift deck that's really trying to rely on refurbish, like you mentioned before, Paul.
Here's one of the strongest cards against Godfarrow's Gift, Arguel's Bloodfast. Arguel's Bloodfast allows Mitchell to start drawing quite a few cards, but he can do it at instant speed on Chris's turn, so it still allows Mitchell to kind of keep the shields up by leaving a Braid mana open. So Mitchell is now going from kind of a mid-range to a pure control strategy. He wants to draw a bunch of cards with the Bloodfast, stay alive, and just he can putatively kill every single threat that Chris provides for the rest of the game.
Kind of interesting, too. Chris is playing, cards like Champion of Wits and the Sunscourge Champion, not necessarily as plan A, right? I mean, he's not trying to beat down with 2 powered 3 drops. But it actually does come in fairly handy when your opponent has Arguel's Bloodfast, because we've seen other matchups where it's a draw 9, like where the deck just is not going to be attacking your life total in any capacity, and they just sit there and draw down to 2 and don't really have any fear of losing. Here, Chris is actually going to say, well, you got to take care of these at some point.
And Mitchell's removal spells are 2 copies of a Braid that he does not want to use on this Sunscourge Champion. So he'd much rather deal with Sunscourge Champion with a different part of his removal suite.
Well, I have an idea. Then draw a card. Boom.
He does have a Glorybringer, it looks like to me, but is that a Glorybringer? No.
Yeah, I think it is.
It might just be 2 of Braids.
Oh, he might have 2 of Braids. Yeah, you might be right. All right, well, what can he do then?
Not a lot. Then the reason why is that he needs to leave the shields up. He cannot tap out during his turn and allow Chris to just refurbish Godfarrow's Gift, because once you do that, things cascade very quickly out of control for you.
Yeah,
so
we see the Angel of Invention already in the graveyard there for Ferber. So if he is able to get the Godfarrow's Gift, he has his best recursion target at the ready. Instead, though, he's just going to go ahead and play one.
Looks like he wants Thopters, which makes sense. He's moving in slow motion,
Yeah,
which is
looks
kind
like
of
our
cool.
Video's chopping up a little bit for us here. We're having our super director BJ take a look at it now. Not really sure why it's doing that.
It's
though.
good if you're trying to train yourself for seasickness. You know what I mean? That this you can kind of develop a tougher stomach. You see, you don't think about those sorts of things when you're
Wow.
watching a Magic Grand Prix stream, but we give more than just
You are an optimist, Paul. You are
competition
a very glass
and
half full
entertainment.
guy.
Yeah, there's a training component to it as well.
The stream starts to die, and all of a sudden you're getting like military training for large
Yeah.
sea exercises from Paul Rietzel. I don't really see how you could go wrong here. Glacial Fortress is going to be the target of a field of ruin here from Mitchell.
Now, it could be that both these players are just very tired.
You don't think it's the video?
You know, it's always important to investigate all the possibilities and then eliminate them before you.
By the way, somebody in the chat just looked up the card. Sea legs.
Slow motion.
In sea legs.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we had a bit of an issue there. As you could tell, the video was lagging out on us, and
That wasn't the players.
would have taken
Okay.
a little while for us to get through. So we're going to have to just kill that one for now, though we may have another time walk video for you to watch instead of that. And I'll see if I can't get if we're not going to get that one, I'll try to get the results in the chat, in our chat, and I'll try to relay that to you on whether it was Mitchell winning that one or if it were. In the meantime, it looks like we're getting the other one set up, which is going to be Eric Froelich.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's playing against Justin Webb. And these two gentlemen are both on 33 match points. So they're sitting, and the same as our main feature match for this round as well. They're both sitting at 11 and 2.
And how about Justin Webb playing green-blue Stompy, a man after Andrew Beckstrom's own heart? So he's got a lot of the traditional, the Steel Leaf Champion, Land of War Elves type of shell. But again, the blue cards we mentioned are so strong specifically against, Turbo Fog, as we've been calling it. Things like Negate and Commit are extremely strong when your opponent needs to resolve 7 mana cards in order to really be effective. Eric, I think, big fan of this Turbo Fog deck. All foil, kind of cool. What I mean?
They've had it so that you get those Nexus of Fate, which you can only get in foil. And people don't usually like to have only one card in their deck in foil.
Feels different, yeah.
So they'll usually put some other card in, and then that way when you're shuffling and manipulating the deck, it's the same. Eric just said, no, I'll just foil out the rest of the deck then. That's fine.
I'm Eric Froelich. Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at that match right now for Time Walk. Okay, Justin Webb's on the left, Eric Froelich on the right. Again, this is Turbo Fog for Fro. But I got to say, Paul, you were just talking about this Steel Leaf Stompy with blue, and you were saying that a lot of those cards are brought in because they're good against Turbo Fog. This can't bode well for Froelich.
Traditionally, Turbo Fog is extremely strong against these green decks because the green decks need to win through combat damage. Turbo Fog is really good at drawing cards and preventing from ever taking combat damage. Steel Leaf Stompy, with the blue, has the access to Spell Pierce, to Commit to Memory, to Negate, and since Eric only has a few cards that are actually relevant and they all happen to be expensive, stopping just one of them from resolving can often be enough to win. So my expectation would be that game one is really difficult for Justin, but once he's able to load his deck full of negates and other blue cards, that he has a really good shot in the post sideboard games.
Turn 3, Steel Leaf Champion from Justin Webb, and I'm pretty sure I could hear a chuckle from the past from Eric Froelich, who says, is that all you got?
Yeah.
But he, of course, will have noticed the Botanical Sanctum there and stuff. He'll know he's not up against just the normal mono-green Stompy deck, with the Galtas and that kind of stuff, which I'm sure he'd vastly prefer to be.
Of course.
So Eric certainly is going to respect the possibility of cards like counter spells of various sorts, negate, that kind of thing, to mess up his primary game plan, and knows that he's got his work cut out for him. Because, let's be honest, even a turn 3 Steel Leaf Champion hits very hard.
Nice play there from Eric to main face Glimmer of Genius, which has two functions. Number one, plays around something like a main deck spell, Pierce Negate. Number two, he may want his land drop for the turn to come into play tapped. He happened to find a Scattered Grove, so it was important that Eric found that during the draw from Glimmer of Genius, and now he gets to make a lot of mana here.
He's going to play another copy of Gift of Paradise, tap that land immediately for 2 more, and play one of the critical pieces of the puzzle for him, Search for Azcanta.
He's got the potatoes, he's got the Brussels sprouts, he's got the cabbage. He's really just missing the steak in this case, and the steak is Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. He really wants to find specifically Teferi, get that down, and start either taking turns or fogging Justin's every move.
Oh, he says that Teferi would start me quite nicely. Got to have a fog here. No? All right. How about you just take 9 or 10, excuse me. Down to 11. Boy, that was a big hit.
Yep. 10 ball.
Almost half of his life. He says, not interested in Karn.
Interesting. Wow.
By the way, it looks like we've got both players on foiled out decks here.
Love it.
Nice.
I love it.
First one to play a non-foil loses.
It looks like Eric has a couple copies of Nexus of Fate perhaps in his deck. He had an option to just cast it there and start to, to fill his graveyard for Search for Azcanta, but that runs potentially right into commit. So Eric, I think, is gonna probably fire off a Nexus of Fate during Justin's end step if Justin's unable to provide a lethal threat this turn.
Yeah, Eric clearly respecting the possibility of some type of counter magic here.
Tough spot though, right? Eric doesn't want to go to 1 against a deck that could easily have Walking Ballista in it, but he's going to.
Yeah, here we go. Down to 1. Takes 10. 4 cards in hand for Webb, and boy.
Eric just took 20 in the last 2 turns.
He did.
Like it wasn't like it was nothing.
Just
Like it was nothing. Yeah.
Immediately reaches for the pen.
Sure.
I'll go to 1.
I'll stick 20.
All right, Nexus of Fate is going to resolve, though.
So that means that Eric's about to take an extra turn, then we'll proceed to his normal turn. So
what if he did him in the other order?
well, first you take an extra turn after this one. So after this one being Justin's turn. So this is an extra turn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the difference between an extra turn and your actual turn, but I do know that after this comes Eric's turn.
All right. Oh, there it is. The big hitter. Teferi, this is going to demand an answer from Justin.
Yes, this is when Justin has to fire off that commit. Can't let Teferi into the battlefield.
But if Eric can take enough turns, he may be able to just get it back again. It's only 1 card from the top. He's got another turn coming.
Okay. Now here comes Eric's normal turn.
And look at that. He gets to put the top card into the graveyard thanks to his Search for Azcanta, and then just go Teferi again. And boy, with a double Gift of Paradise, that actually unlocks the possibility of him untapping those and on his end step, casting Nexus of Fate again. And uh-oh, Paul, we could start seeing him going off here.
He has begun to go off. There are still ways to fizzle from here for sure, but the kind of last step in this process is flipping that Search for Azcanta into Azcanta the Sunken Ruin.
Eric clearly committed to going off. He did not take the Settle the Wreckage that he had on top of his library. He's going to do it the good old-fashioned way, and here he goes again.
Good sequencing there in a few ways. Number one, he wants the Nexus shuffled in to increase the density of Nexi in his deck before activating Teferi. Number two, wants to make sure that Nexus resolves.
Before, getting the card and understanding how to proceed further. He's going to resolve it. And then he also is going to cycle Haze of Pollen. He also cast Chart a Course, so he is churning through this library. And this is another critical juncture here. He now has Azcanta the Sunken Ruin, which dramatically increases his chances of finding that card right there, Nexus of Fate.
Right, now it's over. So now between his draw step, his Teferi, plus his Azcanta, he can get through 6 cards every turn. He has other things in his deck like Chart a Course, like Cyclers, that can allow him to dig even deeper. And so even if somehow Eric had to give Justin another turn at this point, his hand is going to be so stocked with answers that there's nothing that Justin can meaningfully do here at this point. So
there's another Nexus.
We're going to see Eric take a lot of turns.
Boy, he's able to use so much mana every turn at this point as well. Yeah, Justin Webb says, I've seen about enough of this. So Eric Froehlich takes down game number 1 and did it pretty cleanly there. He just took 20 on the chin and said, how about I win this turn instead? And now we've got Justin Webb with Llanowar Elves on the play. And he's got a turn 3 Ronus. Now, that's going to need a little help, but that could be pretty explosive draw here for Justin Webb.
Right.
No play for Froelich on 2.
And we mentioned,
search.
we heard from Andrew Beckstrom that this deck, this Steel Leaf Stompy, is able to play kind of a fish style strategy post sideboard. So now he's already has plenty of a board set up. Now Justin wants to sit back on like an occasional negate, maybe a commit to stop Eric's countermeasures.
In the meantime, Froelich is simply going to take a turn to develop his mana. He's going to go back up to 18, but boy, he's facing down a heck of a lot of power here. Currently 11 on the battlefield for Webb. He's going to send 10 of it over in air. Oh, cancel that order. He's going to turn the Llanowar Elves into 2 damage rather than attacking with it for 1.
And Justin does have a
Ronus.
commit. He's saving commit for Eric's potential fog. So he's thinking, okay, even if Eric were to resolve at the Fairy this turn and then untap 2 lands, I can just commit his Haze of Pollen or Root Snare on my turn.
And it would be lethal.
It would be lethal.
Wow, that was a quick game in Justin Webb's favor. Oh, man, you've said it earlier in the day, Paul, but Llanowar Elves just powering out an insane draw, even though there's this constant fear of having it killed off by the red deck that's so prominent in Standard. When it does stick, it is nasty.
And you already feel way better about Eric's chances for Game 3. He's on the play, and Justin does not have Llanowar Elves. So look how much less pressure he's under in this game. I think Justin had something like 18 power out by now by this point in the previous game. Here, there's kind of nothing. So this game developing much more the way Eric would prefer, but he does need blue mana.
Very slow start for Justin Webb. At this point in the last game, he had, 11 power on board?
11 power with the threat for more.
Right, and now he has 2.
Yeah.
Thorn Lieutenant, fine card, but certainly not what he wants to see against the Turbo Fog deck. Just going to give Eric way too much time to get set up unless he can come up with something really powerful and soon.
I'm actually a little surprised Thorn Lieutenant's still in the deck. Post-sideboard games against Turbo Fog, Eric's not interested in targeting any of Justin's creatures, so it really is kind of a Grizzly Bears. And Eric finds the blue mana, so that's a critical turn there for Eric Froelich.
Wow, Gift of Paradise, gain 3 life, use the blue mana to cast Search for Azcanta, and he is now firing on all cylinders. The only other pieces of the puzzle that he needs to put together are Teferi and then start casting Nexus of Fate. Resilient Kenra is the play here for Justin. Looks like he's going to target the Thorn Lieutenant. And Galta is the follow-up. Holy smokes. All right, well, it started off a little slower, but wow, he has certainly gotten there now.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of pressure on Eric's life total. And you mentioned it before, Eric probably wanted to lean on these fogs. And all of a sudden, just one interactive spell from Justin Webb could end the game.
Yeah, one negate, one commit, something of that nature could be ball game.
Eric's going to take a quick double check on Thorn Lieutenant. It does take 6 mana to pump it up. He's only got 5 right now.
I don't see any blue cards in Justin's hand, but with the foiling, it does make it kind of exciting because I really have no idea what anything is.
Yeah. And Justin's just going to attack now. He's respecting the possibility of Settle the Wreckage here because this is a lethal attack. And he was right.
Nice play by Justin.
Yeah.
The minimal attack required to provide a lethal threat for Eric, forcing an answer. Gets another land out of it as well, which turns on things like the Thorn Lieutenant activated ability plus Hashep Oasis. So Justin is going to be looking to set up another lethal attack next turn.
I'm also curious if Eric has one of his, like a Root Snare in hand as a backup plan in case that got countered.
Interesting.
Ooh, Vivian Reed. Are we going to...
Ooh, that's backbreaking.
Are we going to kiss this, one of these enchantments goodbye? Yeah, we are.
Little surprising. Yeah, a little surprising that he wouldn't go for the Gift of Paradise over the Search for Azcanta. It seems like constraining Eric on mana more relevant than on one card selection, especially when you combine the untappability of Teferi with Gift of Paradise. I would have been sorely tempted to target that Gift of Paradise with Vivian Reed.
Well, Justin Webb decided to go for the Search for Azcanta, and he is thoroughly punished for it here as Eric Froelich has been able to cast both Teferi and a replacement Search while keeping that Gift of Paradise mana available as well. That was a big deal.
Yeah, he certainly can't know that he has another copy of Search for Azcanta, so that's a little unlucky there for Justin.
Hashep Oasis is going to be activated on Vinemare now. And Justin Webb's getting in. All at you. And there's Root Snare from Froelich. So he will be taking 0 this turn. Vivian Reed, though, is going to continue to pile cards into Justin Webb's hand. Though this is a big turn for Froelich, right? I mean, untap, play Nexus of Fate, and things can snowball from there. If he doesn't get to either play or resolve a Nexus of Fate, then Justin Webb all of a sudden gets to go. This is a super, super sketchy spot.
Yeah, and we know Justin doesn't have negate, right? He would have used to just win the game. So this is it for Eric. I think he just found a Haze of Pollen. So even if he were to fizzle out this turn, he still could survive.
Karn's Temporal Sundering has been called. He does control a legendary planeswalker, as it were.
Yep.
With Teferi. So Eric is going to do it the hard way here. Or maybe the easy way. That one only cost 6.
And we are getting very close to Search for Azcanta flipping into Azcanta the Sunken Ruin. Wow, and the card on top was good enough that he wanted to keep it here. So,
wow, that really is a signal that it's great. Though he didn't actually do anything, at least on his turn. He simply passed back to Justin at 12. But now he's only facing down 7 power as well, so non-lethal attacks currently for Justin Webb available.
Tough spot for Justin here.
Yeah,
Vivian Reed wants to do so many things this turn.
Yeah. Does he need to cash in Vivian Reed to get rid of the search at this point? Well, first let's do this. Attack Teferi with both of my creatures and draw out a Root Snare from Froelich.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that Vivian now has to take out this second Search for Azcanta. The constraining mana portion of the game is now over. You just want to avoid Eric kind of going infinite.
Steel Leaf Champions follow-up play for Webb before passing a turn back to Froelich. All he did for that turn was cast a Root Snare, so not a whole lot of action. He does need to find something with Teferi.
He's got quite a bit, I think. He's got at least to Settle the Wreckage and some other non-land cards as well. So Eric certainly has the shields up.
At this point, Justin Webb has exactly lethal damage on the battlefield. But he does have decisions to make because, again, we saw Settle the Wreckage earlier. And that is a card that Justin Webb respected before and is going to be aware of now. He also has to decide if he's going to what he attacks with, if it's just going to be, I'm all in, I hope I kill you, or if it's going to be trying to mitigate Teferi on some level. I think he's just going for the I want to kill you play. No, I was wrong. Vinemare is going to go to Teferi, and the other two are going to go to Eric. Oh, but there's a second Settle the Wreckage, and no interaction from Justin Webb. A devastating swing in Eric Froelich's direction. Both of these players clinging to an 11-2 record. We're in MTG Red Zone. That's where it's do or die time. The loser of this match not going to make it into top 8. The winner, good shot, although not guaranteed. And there it is, ultimate Teferi, Paul. That's got to be the death knell here.
It's the death knell. Yeah, that's it.
And how about draw 2 cards off of Glimmer, get rid of 2 of your lands, the 2 blue mana sources specifically.
Yikes.
Froelich is going to draw 2 more with Chart, of course. How about your creature in your land? So ultimate Teferi, exile your 4 best permanents. Go.
Yeah.
Go ahead. How about another one? Get rid of that creature. Nothing like drawing a card and exiling their only threat. This thing is done. That is Teferi plus exile. Play a Search for Azcanta, and I don't see any way out for Justin Webb. He's got to extend the hand, and we may be seeing Eric Froelich in the top 8 here. We got another round to go. He could draw in, depending on how tiebreakers go, or he may have to play. We'll certainly be keeping an eye on that one for you. That was a good close match.
Yeah, that was fun. I mean, that was really back and forth, and both players had planeswalkers. Both players really able to execute their game plan, and we saw kind of the inherent strength of the Teferi Turbo Fog strategy and being able to beat a creature-based strategy.
Absolutely. Great stuff from the feature match here. You got one more round of Swiss play before we cut to our top 8. We're going to bring you to that and more right after these messages.